Hello everyone, it's Frank McGuire.
And Jeff Mack.
And this is another episode of Meanwhile Back on the Podcast. On today's show, we have a special guest, Ralph Orona from No More Mutants, one of the best places on Instagram for the geek-minded. Ralph joins Jeff and I to talk about that huge HBO Max announcement, and we leave no stone unturned as we talk about this paradigm-shifting moment for the entertainment industry.
From there, we untangle the latest announcements surrounding Spider-Man 3, and then we cap the episode off by getting a little rando on Mando.
All this and so much more on this episode of Meanwhile Back on the Podcast.
Meanwhile, back on the podcast, four colossal nerds named Saba, Chris, Christina, and Frank have set out to take on a great darkness that has enveloped the world of fandom with their powers of common sense and the strength to take on even the most butthurt Twitter mobs and insufferable comment section trolls. They fight for truth, objectivity, and nuance in the conversation and debate over fictional made-up shit.
So, like we said at the top, we are talking about everything that has been announced in the last couple of weeks, or the last week or so, about HBO Max and their plans to release all their heavy hitters, all their entire film slate onto their streaming service, onto HBO Max at the same time concurrently with their theatrical schedule, which is crazy and insane. And there's so many questions and there's so many things that I want to say. There's so many things that we need to talk about. So we're definitely going to get into that. And we're also going to talk a little bit about everything that's happening with Spider-Man 3 in like the last 48 hours. It's been a complete shitstorm. And to join us for today's conversation, we've got our buddy Ralph Orona from No More Mutants. How you doing, Ralph?
Doing all right, buds. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, no worries, man. We're so excited to have you on. You know, we've been following you on Instagram since we started this show. And, you know, we've had many phone conversations, you and I, nerdy out and geeking out. I was on a couple of IG Lives with you, with your audience. And, we just kind of found this, this similar vibe, this similar tone to kind of how our journey started into this whole fandom culture thing. So I'm excited to have you on, and I'm excited to get the chance to talk about these particular subjects with you, because I feel like I needed to have somebody on who's around my age, because it's really only guys like us that really kind of understand the extent of going like this isn't whiplash for us, right? This isn't whiplash if moving towards a streaming service. Like this is just evolution for us as older people. We've seen it happen to video games, to music, to film, to television. We've seen it all, right? But for the younger generation, they may be reacting to this in a very like, holy fuck, what the hell's happening to my universe? Please, like, don't shut down my movie theaters, right? So I wanted to make sure that we could have a number of different perspectives on that. And Jeff's here because Jeff's a co-host, but he's obviously, he's also here to give us a little bit of that perspective of the younger generation. So
I'm considered younger. Awesome.
Yeah, you are considered younger, I think. You're just over 30, so I don't consider that old at all, man.
Oh, I wish I was your age, Jeff.
Yeah, me too, bro.
I don't know, man. I think 33 kind of old.
Well, Jesus Christ died at 33, so you've made it past him.
Okay, so let's get into this thing. So like I said in the intro, HBO Max, Warner Media plans to release their entire film slate, their entire 2021 film slate on HBO Max concurrently with their theatrical releases. So not only will you have the opportunity to go see them in theaters, barring that this COVID thing gets under control. It's all dependent on what happens with the COVID-19 virus and whether they can reopen theaters, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also this backup plan to have it available on HBO Max. We're talking about Wonder Woman. We're talking about the Suicide Squad. We're talking about The Matrix. We're talking about Dune. There's so many major film titles that are going to be released onto this streaming service for HBO Max, and this is kind of crazy. And from what I'm hearing, there's the film companies, the competing studios are also in conversation now internally about what they're going to do if they're going to try and do something similar to try and match it. Ralph, what do you think about this, man?
Well, when I first heard it, my neck kind of broke because I was working and I have the TV on just as noise in the background, and I hear this, and I'm listening to stocks and all that stuff, and they announced this, and I'm like, what? What did they say about Wonder Woman? And suddenly, when I start listening, I rewind, I'm like, this. I had heard the Wonder Woman thing, but then when they said everything, I was like, wait a second, this is crazy. Now I can understand the reasoning behind it, and I just know HBO and Warner are trying to get their stock up, financially, that they don't want to lose money. And unfortunately, because theaters have been closed and they have been open for a little bit, they've lost a lot of money. But that experience, to me, I understand it's going to be streamed, and maybe the younger generation will grab onto it. We're all watching The Mandalorian and other things, but maybe there's a whole bunch of us that just don't want this. I personally would rather see a theatrical film in a theater setting. Mm-hmm. It's not the same like when you saw Endgame, like I think we were talking about earlier, and you hear, Falcon say on your left and the whole theater erupts. You're not going to get that anymore in your living room.
No.
That's just you and your kids, and they may not even know it. And if you have kids or your wife is like, I didn't want to watch this, but in a theater setting, it's communal. Everybody's having the same experience, and you no longer have that. And I kind of see the logic of, we need this to make money. And, they've had some issues with DC Comics even cutting titles, and it's a Warner-based company. But tomorrow Disney reports, and I'm waiting to hear what they say was what they're going to do with Black Widow and all their stuff. Will they even take this route? I hope they do not. But I do think maybe theaters may want to invest in different type of seating arrangements, no longer one whole aisle. It's going to have to be like 2 seats, 2 seats, 2 seats, and spacing in between, because I want that experience again.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with a lot of what Ralph is saying. One is the whole communal experience. It's a very visceral thing to sit with, people that you share a passion for something with, and see them experience it the way that you're experiencing it and share in that. Like, I think that's something that's just not, it's not something I'm ready to give up yet. That's for sure.
My question is, what are they going to do with places like Canada and around the world? Because they're not launching it on HBO Max. It's only on HBO Max USA at the moment.
Well, that's the thing, is Crave has been supporting. Okay, so for all you listening in the US, we have a streaming service called Crave, and Crave has been supporting HBO Max programming already. So there hasn't been any announcement from Bell, who is the parent company for Crave.
So I've heard that Crave will support it, but not on the launch of the actual theatrical release. So like they'll get them. Yeah, there'll be a delay. Crave will get it, but it won't be at the same time as HBO Max in the States.
Okay. Well, before I get Jeff's first reactions, I want to establish something for everybody out there. So for anybody that doesn't know yet, or isn't aware of it, HBO Max is a part of Warner Media. Warner Media and DC are the same company, obviously, but they have a larger parent company, and that's AT&T. Mm-hmm. AT&T is their parent company. I think they've owned them now for 3 or 4 years. I can't remember. AT&T hasn't exactly, or Warner Media hasn't exactly done right by DC in a lot of respects, moving up to this point in time. They've run pretty roughshod over the comics, the publishing side of the business. I remember at a few live events, they basically shut down the entire presence for DC at certain events. Like, they didn't have any booths, and they didn't have any, they really had nothing there. So DC hasn't really exactly been the crown jewel in the Warner Media crown as of late. But I think with what transpired with the Snyder Cut and seeing the fans' response, I think that breathed a little bit more life into the value of DC for AT&T. I think that was something that they could tangibly look at and say, okay, all right, we see the KPIs moving, we see the data, we see these trends. Like, they could take that to the bank and say, okay, this is something we can certainly invest some money behind and see what will actually return to us in profit. So I think that's a big part of it. But Jeff, what was your first impression, dude, when you heard this news?
Is it coming to Canada? That was my first impression.
That was the first impression? Okay.
I mean, I'm upset because I do enjoy seeing these big blockbusters in movies. The fact that they're pushing it to streaming services, it's kind of weird. It's kind of like a cop out. I know it's the time and the time we live in, and they got to adjust and make money where they need to. But I mean, it sucks for the fans. It's not a great decision. And I know a lot of the directors and actors are all really pissed off about this.
Yeah.
I was reading stuff about Gunn getting really pissed off, and he's he does not want his movies to be on there.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him. You make these big productions and you don't you don't want these on small screen and streaming at home. You want these big productions on the big screen for the effects and everything. It's for everyone to enjoy. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, yes, there are definitely directors that are upset. So I got a quote here from Chris Nolan, and he definitely didn't mince his words at all. He was pretty harsh. So what he said, some of our industry's biggest filmmakers and most important movie stars went to bed the night before thinking they were working for the greatest movie studio and woke up to find out that they were working for the worst streaming service.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's harsh.
That's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
That's pretty harsh.
Even the AMC president came out and didn't mince his words either. He was pretty harsh against the whole Warner Brothers HBO Max thing.
What did he say?
How they are single-handedly ruining theater-going experience.
Wow.
And well, I kind of, we do live in this pandemic age, and I understand, we can't all be in the theater at the same time. But if you limit it, you do spaced out seating, you block out certain aisles so that way, maybe families of 5 can sit together, but then nobody else on that aisle. But you still have that experience. I mean, remember, we're older, Jeff. So there was a day I waited in line to pick up tickets for episode 1 before the prequels. And then there was no cosplay back then, but I dressed up as a Jedi and I went to go see it opening night with my friends. And just the lightsabers and the screaming when the Lucasfilm logo pops up on the screen. You're not going to have that again. And then this entire industry could collapse. You have people who are not just the people who are making the film, but your regular kid who's 19 years old working at a theater. He has his first little job. He's now got no job. He's got to go look for a job. And that also generates kids who then become filmmakers that they said, I remember when I first saw, we all hear Kevin Smith stories, he went to go see Batman when it came out, that day he left work early or he, bailed out on work just to go see it. And Kevin Smith is somebody that we all respect for what he's done for our industry and what we love. But that film helped him to get there, and you're losing that.
Yeah, but okay, so here was my reaction, guys. I don't necessarily see this as entirely bad. Okay, and I'll tell you why. I've been paying attention to what the theatrical industry has been doing over the last couple of years pretty closely, and they've been losing money hand over fist pretty horribly. Cineplex here in Canada, I think, was bankrupt at one point. Mm-hmm. And there was a British conglomerate that was trying to buy them out. I think it was Landmark Cinemas. And the reason is because, they've overestimated their product. They charge a dick and a ball to sit in a theater to watch a movie they also get your other ball when you go to the concession stand.
Yeah.
So they literally castrate you financially during your theatrical experience. And to me, that kind of taints it a little bit. You know, that kind of ruins it. You know, the movies are supposed to be magical. They're not supposed to be, you know, you're not supposed to feel gouged every time you leave a fucking
That's
theater.
true. I have spent like quite a bit of money, especially with like their VIP experiences here. I've gone on like a date with my girlfriend. It cost me like almost $250 to go see a movie and get some food and like drinks. That's insane.
Wow.
Yep.
I mean, I'm a father of 3 kids, so 5 of us going to a theater. I remember when they were like, well, we want the popcorn and we want the nachos and drinks. I was like, holy cow, this is worse than, you know, the first day at Disney World.
Mm-hmm.
It's taxing at a certain point.
Yeah, it's costly. It's a costly endeavor. It's a costly experience. Now, let's look at both sides of the business here. So there's the quality of movies, and then and then the price of going to see the movies. And I felt like they were kind of going in opposite directions for like the last 5-6 years, maybe even 10 years. Okay, other than the big tentpole films, other than, you know, if Marvel didn't exist right now, or if Lucasfilm had not been, you know, on Disney's buying list, you know, I don't even think the theaters may not even be in business right now, because at this point, all Hollywood gives us is reboots, right? Yeah. Reboots and just retreads of the same old fucking story. And if it's not a retread, then it's got some sort of socio-political agenda to it. It's, you know, it's got this subtext of feminism or equality or representation or whatever the fuck it is, right? And I just feel like the theatrical experience isn't what it used to be, you know? I think me and Ralph can speak accurately to what it was like in the 80s and in the early 90s. Like, it was fucking magical to go see a Spielberg movie in the theater.
When you saw The Matrix in the theater.
Yeah, or The Matrix, yeah.
When I snuck in to see it underage. Yeah, it was great.
There you go. But we were getting quality content at that point, right?
Yeah.
I think what's happened is not only is it Hollywood's sin of just rebooting and rehashing shit, but I think it's also the audience now has access to an incredible amount of entertaining content. Okay? Game of Thrones has almost a theatrical production budget.
Correct.
A theatrical level production budget, right? We're hearing about this new Lord of the Rings series that's going to blow every serialized TV show's budget out of the water. It's supposed to be insane, right? Look at The Mandalorian, high production value, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what's happening is we've slowly made it more comfortable for people to stay at home and to experience these stories and these cinematic experiences from the safety of their own couch and at a place where they don't have to spend any more money. So I almost feel like this is partly the theatrical industry's problem. I almost feel like this is partly their fault. I also feel like this is partly Hollywood's fault, because they just want to continue to churn out the same bullshit over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's nothing enriching about the theatrical experience anymore unless it's coming from Disney, Pixar, Marvel, DC, or, you know, the Harry Potter, like unless it's like a franchise that you're emotionally invested into, there's nothing enriching about the experience anymore.
You're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct, because I was just thinking about that. Like, what brought me to the theater? What was I watching in theaters? And, you know, you have the Game of Thrones experience. You're at home. It's building. You're getting to a crescendo. You're seeing all these interweaving connections between characters, and you're like, this is exactly what you're just. It's like reading a book, and then you go to a theater and you're just watching a 2-hour film. And some of these are masterpieces, you know, and then some of them are just like, somebody wanted to make a film, somebody gave them a budget, They gave them a few cameras and they made a film, and it's big poo poo, but whatever. It filled seats in the theater, but that's not what we want anymore. I think we've been spoiled because of, maybe not Lucasfilm, because geez, from 1983 to Episode 1, there were years. Those were the dark ages for me when I started reading the EU, the expanded universe, and trying to find out who Dash Rendar was, on my Shadows of the Empire video game, because he wasn't in the movies of Empire Strikes Back. But here we have Iron Man, which connects to Captain America, which connects to Thor, which connects to all these other films. And you're like, they're all one universe. And it's not that everything has to be universe, but I think that's where we start getting more involved, and it becomes almost like an annual event. Like, hey, I have 3 major films I'm going to watch this year: The Eternals, Black Widow, and the Thor movie, whatever, because they all are connected. It's almost like your TV episodes that were connected. But when you go see, a quick junky film, it's like, this is not the experience. And I just wasted like $50 just to get in and get some popcorn and nachos and a
100%.
drink. And I have to pay
100%.
for parking, and I have to drive up, and now I got to drive back down, and it's later, and it's totally different.
Yeah, it's like a chore. Like I don't even go to theaters unless it's like a big blockbuster production, like a superhero movie or just some crazy thing. Like I feel like it's a waste of my money and time going to see a comedy in theaters because like it's not, you don't need a big screen to watch a comedy. A laugh is a laugh on any size, right?
100%.
So like it's wasted opportunities, and like the material out there is far in between. Like it almost makes the theater kind of like obsolete.
Correct. Yep. I mean, like I wanted to see Coming to America, or its sequel, but would I watch that at home? Yeah, I'll watch that at home instead of paying $60 to see the film. That's not the film. Now, Endgame, take all my money.
Yeah, hey man, I went to see Endgame 3 times. Almost every Marvel film I've seen 3 times in theater.
Wow.
Because I'm this immersive viewer. Like, listen, I am Hollywood's best customer, okay? Like, I can admit that a million times over, because I will go back multiple times because I'm scared I missed something, right? Yeah. Like whenever a new movie comes out, and Jeff can probably pick up on this from me, I just go into writer's mode, right? Mm-hmm. Like I just want to know about subtext. I want to know about little subtleties that the director was trying to say with doing this, or the writer was trying to say with doing this, or what is this guy making a reference to? Where are the analogies? Where's the subtext in the film? I go back 3 times just so I can figure that shit out. Okay. Yeah. That's why I loved Last Jedi so much, is because it had everything that I ever wanted in a Star Wars film. It actually made me think. And those are the kind of films that I want to see, are the ones that make me think. And really, I don't get to do that a lot anymore, because Marvel has gotten to a point where it's almost formulaic in approach, right? Mm-hmm. And there really hasn't been a lot of change. Okay, like listen, I loved Endgame. Okay, we can't turn this episode into like what we loved about Marvel movies and shit, because we got so much else to cover.
Yeah, we do.
But Endgame, I'll say this about Endgame: I loved it, but it was literally just like fan porn. Yeah, like it was fan porn. It has
flaws. It has
the story made no fucking sense at all. No sense at all. Okay. How did Captain America go and put the Soul Stone back? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Did he find a spaceship just randomly? Like, ridiculous.
What did he say when he saw the Red Skull there? I mean, it's like...
That too, but how did he even get there?
Yeah.
But how did he even get there, right? Yeah. Like, it doesn't make any sense,
Movie magic. That's how we got there.
Exactly. Suspend your disbelief, folks. Yeah. Suspend your disbelief. But getting back on track here. So yes, I think so. One of the things I've been a huge advocate for as of late is longer form storytelling. Okay. And that's because I'm starting to doubt whether the feature film format has what it takes to tell a properly character-driven story with plot and with characters and fully fleshed out characters and, you know, well-developed writing. Because the more and more I sit down and I watch theatrical movies, especially anything that's supposed to be character-driven, I feel like there's a lot of corner cutting. Not only that, but I feel like the initial vision by the director is the way that it should be told, but then the studio interferes and says, okay, well, we need to limit this to 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right? And you lose everything out of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not only do I feel like I'm getting the cheapest form of storytelling possible and spending the most money to see it and having to leave my house, pay for food and, you know, basically turn it into a fucking outing, right? You pay transit and, you know, you want something to eat on the way home and anyways, not only am I the most shallow stories, but it's just not what it used to be anymore. And like I said, like I'm moving towards this direction of long form storytelling. And I would like to see the stuff that we love move to longer format. And I'm not saying it has to move to the small screen, but what I would like to see is have the studios take an episodic approach to their story building through the movies. Don't start your production as a one-off, right? Almost budget your films across a 3-film arc or a 5-film arc or whatever, because you're going to get a better storytelling experience. You'll have to give the fans something to get them to want to come back. But I think if you tell them right up front, hey, listen, you know, we've got this fucking fantastic story that we're going to tell, but it's going to happen in these, it's going to be the serialized format. So you're not going to know the end of the story until you see the 4th or 5th film. I feel like that's a better experience.
I agree
right?
with you. I agree. And I think the first time it's not serialized as the way you're mentioning it, but that cliffhanger that you got on the first Lord of the Rings. And I was like, what do you mean I have to wait for part 2? And they're just walking. That's it. That's where the movie ended. And it brought me back to the same theater again to watch it with my friends to continue the journey. But like Jackson had a 3-hour film and the studio's like, no, we got to make it 2 hours. So then you get the extended DVD, you know, which we ended up seeing it at home. But really, when we see it at home, we're like, I would have paid money to see that in the theater, you know, but the theater,
100%.
The studios, you know, if you cut a movie to 2 hours, that means I could show 2 or 3 showings additional per night, per room. And that means per how many, you know, that's 200 people in a theater, you know, multiply that times the price of the ticket plus the concessions and stuff like that. So they get more butts in the seat. But it's like, I'd rather have an episodic format, a serialized format where I'm more emotionally tied and I want to continue that story. And even though there's a gap because, you know, they're not going to release part 1, part 2, part 3 back to back to back, you know, like let's say when Lucas re-released the special editions, you know, and it was like 1 month, 1 month, and 1 month, which was amazing. But that being the case, I'll wait, but I want to be connected. But this whole little 2 hour and I'm done. It's like, yeah, but I didn't. The character wasn't what I expected. I didn't. Why are there so many gaps in the film? It's because of that format.
Yep, 100%. And also look at the source material in which it, you know, that inspires these films, right?
Yep.
Their comic books, their graphic novels, their animated shows. So the serialized stories, the structure is already there. You just have to translate it to the big screen, right? It's already there. We're already prepared to come back and learn more about this particular character's journey. You don't need to end the film like with some sort of definitive conclusion every fucking time.
Correct.
You know, like you can continue the story, continue the arc. That is quality viewing. Basically, you're taking a television, you're taking a format that was developed for television, for home viewing, but you're putting it on a bigger screen and you're changing the experience. But there's also an opportunity here for the theaters to provide more value if this was the shift, if this is what happened, because they could just sell you a pass. they could be like, okay, so you want to go see this particular franchise who's going to have these 5-6 movies for this one story. Okay, we're going to sell you in advance, this package for X amount of dollars, or you can buy it at the door, when you go into the theater for a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this gave me an entire fucking business model, right?
It sure can.
Yeah. And the problem is nobody has the foresight. Well, look at the movies we're getting, like, and these are the people that are giving it to us. The same people that we're expecting to have the foresight and the vision to do something this transformative are the same people that are giving us reboot fucking movies. So, you know what? Maybe I need to suspend my expectations, because that's probably not a fucking good chance if I'm depending on these folks. But this is the way that it should be done. Like, I think that this is the way that it should be done. The one thing I will miss out on is, I think we've all said this, is that communal experience, right? That is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I love sitting in a theater just before the camera's about to roll and looking around and counting all the cosplayers and trying to figure out what everybody's dressed up dressed up as, turning around in my seat and talking to people about the trailer and asking for their theories and trading my theories and, doing all that. Like, I love that part of it, but I think that that's something that we can all experience in other settings. I don't necessarily think that the movie theater needs to be that conduit for those particular experiences.
But what you're sharing is the fandom, the whole, even a convention, a con will do that for you. It's that feeling. And I think we just really miss our own tribe, because, like, you and I are from the same tribe. We love this stuff. But if I go talk to my wife, she's like, yeah, I don't know about who Grogu is. I'm like, geez, okay, we're not related, even though we're married, but we're not the same tribe. And I miss that. I do miss that communal thing and that time when you're just in the line. I remember waiting for Return of the Jedi. It was my birthday weekend. My mom took me. She bought me a shirt, and it was Darth Vader with these 3 red guys that looked more menacing than him as he came out of an elevator, ironed onto my shirt. And I was like, I have the shirt. And then I'm looking at other kids, and they're in the line with their action figure or their shirt. And I'm like, oh, we're just talking, and I was a kid back then. And that's what we're all going to miss. And as much as we need to be safe, I'm all with it. Maybe we have to change the seating. Maybe we need to take out seats from the theater, but still have the theater. And I am happy that they're still bringing it to the theater for those of us like us that may want to go to the theater and see Wonder Woman or Dune on the big screen. But they really got to up their own game in producing and really giving us better content for us to gorge on. I saw an article today that somebody had asked Charlize Theron, like, I would love you to be in a Die Hard reboot with just
the lesbians,
the lesbian film, of Die Hard. And she's like, yeah, I can go for that. But I'm like, why do we need another reboot? Like, when John McClane showed up on the scene, there had never been another John McClane. And we were like, this guy's a badass. And then here we are, like, well, let's just reboot it. Don't reboot it. Somebody come up with your own intellectual property that is super badass. And nobody's doing that.
Do you guys notice that nobody ever wants to reboot a film from 2000s? Like, it's not a thing. Like, because other than Marvel, other than Warner Brothers with their Harry Potter franchises, and other than really anything that was originally some sort of form of source material that was in fandom, we haven't really gotten anything that great. There's been a lot of art house films that have been fantastic. Things that have walked away with awards, some really eye-opening films, really thought-provoking films. And I'm a cinephile. Like, I'm not just into movies that are from fandom culture or that are genre. I'm into movies about people too. So I wanted to also talk about what is going to be the future of the theatrical experience. What are gonna Like, what do you guys think are some possibilities for movie theaters as we move forward here? Because I think that this is definitely going to obviously affect their bottom line. This is going to be a big chunk out of their bottom line.
I think movies need to have like bigger gaps between releases, like of different films. If you have less films in the theater, now you have a bigger audience to like. You'll have more theaters available to host like the big blockbusters. Like instead of having like the main 4 theaters like to see like a Marvel film, have like almost half the entire theater is covering this one film, and you can social distance everyone inside and like have different seating arrangements so not everyone's side by side and stuff like that. I think that's a good idea to keep the whole movie experience going. Or even putting up more like the drive-in theaters. I feel like drive-in theaters were a huge thing during this like pandemic. They were thriving quite a bit. I think putting up more of those is a fantastic idea. Or even like turning in warehouses into like drive-in warehouse theaters, because they have they have these.
That's a good idea.
You can go to exhibits now and drive through exhibits. So what's stopping like people being able to like drive into like a open concept warehouse with like no borders or whatever with your car and just have like a roof covering and then just like a big screen?
That's a good idea.
I really like that.
Definitely a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a good idea.
Yeah.
I've been thinking like this. I think that, before Hollywood became the monster that it is, where it just constantly just churns out shit, no matter what it is, like as long as somebody thinks that there's a market for it, they're going to make it. The process was a lot more selective, and movies would run a lot longer in theaters, and there would be fewer of them, et cetera, et cetera. So what I would like to see is if the studios are going to concurrently release films onto streaming services, then I think what the theatrical guys need to do is they need to pivot. And I think that the best pivot here is to start bringing back classic movie titles, and doing like little mini film festivals. You know what I mean? Like do a string of Marvel movies, do a string of Harry Potter, do a string of DC, do a Quentin Tarantino little film fest, do Stanley Kubrick, and like charge a reasonable amount of fucking money to like see those films. If they bring 2001 back into a theater and it's cost $2 to go see it, I'm going to go see it.
Hell yeah, Toonie Tuesdays.
Right?
Correct.
I'm going to go see it.
Yep.
And I think that's a business model that's sustainable, because if you lower the prices, you can increase the quantity of people, you can increase the volume of customers coming to the theater if you reduce your prices to a reasonable price. Like right now, like the last time I went to the theater for an IMAX ticket, I think it was around $16, right? $16 to go and see an IMAX film. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I like, IMAX is a different experience, and the technology I think is definitely worth it. But the general audience tickets are like $14.99. So there's not really that much of a difference, right? So I think what you need to do is you need to change the theater experience back into something that people can do when they feel like they want to do it, right? It doesn't need to be these giant fucking corporations anymore. Because let's face it, they were losing money even before we got to this point, because people were at home streaming content. They were at home torrenting content.
Yep.
They were at home, watching whatever they wanted, because honestly, in the golden age of television, in this age of television on demand, we're getting better stuff through the shows than we are in the films. Right?
Yep.
Like there's so many more shows I'd rather watch than films. Right? I don't even really stream movies that much anymore. Like I'm either deep into some serialized thing, like, season 3 or season 4 or whatever, typically, and I'm just kind of rotating between what I'm trying to finish. So I think that if you push the movies back into theaters and come up with some exclusive deals with the theater chains, I think that there might be I think that they can breathe life back into their business model. But I don't see theaters being a big part of our culture moving forward. I just think that there's just, I think that they've kind of, killed their own market. They again, we're probably going to say this a million more times, but the price of going to the movies is too expensive for what you get. It's too expensive. And without the promise of quality content, why the fuck would I pay for it? Yeah. Right? And especially with your track record, Hollywood, your track record sucks. Like, sucks. If we're going to invest money, we want something that's good. And we can, the experience of, or the utility of, or the process, sorry, with streaming is I can figure out if something's watchable or interesting within that first episode. But then I'm not spending anything extra to change over to something else if I want to. I've already paid for my streaming package. I've already paid for that. It's already done. So I just think that they need to kind of pivot. There needs to be a pivot. It needs to be smart. It needs to be friendly to the market, and it needs to be friendly to the times. But I do love your idea, Jeff, about the indoor drive-in theaters. I think that's fantastic. Ralph, what would you do to save theaters, man? Or like, what would you do to change the theater business moving forward?
I mean, I like his idea of the whole drive-in. I remember a few drive-in theaters here in Miami where I'm at, and obviously they're gone. They went the way of the dodo years ago when I was a young boy, and now there are shopping malls where those drive-in theaters used to be, but now those shopping malls are going to be empty, and some of them are struggling. I mean, like, but I think the one that's really going to survive all this is the theaters that bring a unique experience, like the theaters that let you go ahead and order food, and like like IMAX. There's not a screen like IMAX. I mean, yeah, I remember taking my kids to go see Lion King when it was in IMAX, and Lion King had already come out years prior, but they had seen it on VHS, and I'm like, well, let's go. And it was the big jumbo screen that literally the speakers were behind it, and it was just, I was like blown away by this film, and I had seen it already. But each theater is going to have to come up with its own way to be unique and for people to want to go. I mean, before it used to be, we have stadium seating, we have individual chairs, so that way nobody's kicking your chair and so forth. But now it's got to be different. It's got to be different. But I do like the idea, like Jeff said, like there's going to be tons of warehouses in every city that you can just literally do this for them.
Yeah, there could be. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think what we're going to see is also as more of these condo buildings get built up, with these crazy amenities and stuff, I think theaters will be a part of it. I think theaters will be a big thing moving forward within these condo spaces. Not that they're not already, because they are. They're like, they call them viewing rooms or whatever. But and then again, the whole big screen experience can be had in your own home for around $1,000. Like, you can buy a decent projector and a screen and a surround sound system, and have your friends over, and you can have that communal experience in your home. But not everybody's got the space to do that. I get that, but it's still something. It's still an alternative to the actual theaters. And I think that they got they got too cocky, right? Yeah. And they need to bring their business model in line with the market and with the consumer, and figure out how to kind of get back into play here, because they're not in play anymore. And then the other thing is, dude, they run those places from the morning until the night.
Yeah, they don't need
even
to.
If it's, they don't need to.
Yeah.
They don't need all those people. They don't need all the pomp and glitz. They don't need all that shit. They don't need crazy, indoor interior decorate. They don't need all that shit. Like, just cut your fucking bottom line, guys. Like, make it look like a theater, but don't go overboard.
And they have made them go overboard with neon lights and all that, which is really unnecessary.
100%, because a movie viewer doesn't need a habitual movie viewer doesn't need to be enticed into your theater we come to your theater already with the mindset that we're coming to watch a movie. We decide at home on our phones we're going to watch a movie. It has nothing to do with the way your place looks. Yeah. Nothing. If anything, it's about price, it's about comfort, and it's about location.
Yeah, and your screen and your Dolby surround or lack thereof.
Yes, exactly. It's the actual viewing experience, right? It's the actual viewing experience. Yep. So I wanted to talk about, I was earlier talking about the feature-length format, the feature-length movie format. How do you guys think that this is going to affect the value of feature-length films, the utility of feature-length films moving forward? Because we're basically going to be delivered, new release feature films on a format that is more geared towards long-form storytelling through serialized TV on demand. So what do you think that this does to the feature film format?
Like in the sense of if it's going to change pricing, or are they going to change the format itself?
No, like what I'm kind of contemplating here is the feature film like are we still going to be, is Hollywood still going to invest as much money as they are into feature films as they are now if this whole streaming thing works out?
No, I think they go more the way of like feature length series. It just makes more sense. You have a longer format. You have like an abundance of time to really tell your story and get like whatever message across. I think they're going to move away from feature length films if streaming is the way they're going, because now you have more options, and especially as like a viewer, it's so much easier to pause it wherever you need and continue whatever your everyday life and then come back to it, right? You don't have to sit there for like the whole thing.
It's a better experience.
Yeah,
it definitely is. It's a better experience in a vacuum, but it does definitely take away that communal aspect, that sitting in the theater.
For sure.
Sitting in the theater is a fun thing. Like, as much as I sit here and I complain about the prices and I talk about, the shitty movies that I've had to watch because Hollywood keeps doing reboots, I always have fun when I go to the theater. It's always an experience, and I always have a good time, and I like being in that dark room and the crazy sound system and the big screen and the whole nine, so if that can be replicated at home, then I can see this definitely moving towards something of what Jeff's talking about, for sure.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Okay. So, and I think we've seen some pretty tremendous successes in the world of, very cinematic but serialized long form, TV on demand storytelling, like we said, Game of Thrones, The Mandalorian,
Witcher 3,
The Witcher, right.
Or Witcher. Yeah.
There's been so many properties that have been successful on these platforms and serve and have been better as serialized television formats, but also could have been feature films, like could have also existed as feature films. You know what I'm saying? Like there could have been a Game of Thrones feature film. They just would have cut down the story. Now, this is a big what if. This is a huge what if. Like I am speculating wildly right now. But what if this is the death of the feature film? What if this is the first step in killing the feature film?
I mean, there are long-term repercussions that will even affect streaming services, even what we're getting out of those streaming services. A lot of that income, I think a lot of that income from films, like you think about Nolan's film that really didn't generate the money that he thought it would, that the theaters thought it would, that they invested in it. They're not going to get that back. If you kill the feature film, I think that's the driving force between the other ones, the episodic stuff. And that makes its own money, because remember, the episodic stuff is driving subscription counts, which is helping their stock numbers. But I think the feature films, once they have their budget, they come up with a profit, and that profit supersedes it, the break even line. That all goes into, okay, here's a future projects that we can do. and here's some episodic stuff that we're going to get, but now we don't have that money flowing in. It could affect it. Like if we had a Game of Thrones series, that type of mega event that we were all following, would that impact it? I think it would. Kind of like when the Writers Guild went on strike, when Lost was going on and Battlestar Galactica, and they had to cut episodes from the series.
Yep, I remember that.
I think it would affect it dramatically.
I personally don't think it's the end of a feature film. I don't see it going anywhere. Yeah, we're in a lull right now, but I don't think it's gone, or at least gone forever at all.
Well, you know what's going to happen though, guys, is that if the numbers come back more in the black than feature films when they do this, if Warner Brothers sees that this is a way more efficient way and a much more profitable way for them to deliver content to the end user and to make money while doing it, that will be game over. Like if they can't, like if the margin between the two, if the gap is too wide, right?
Mm-hmm.
If this is like an extremely profitable venture, we're going to see the studio shift away from feature films.
But then we'll also probably see a lot of talent walk away, because you guaranteed a lot of directors and actors are in it for feature-length films, not like the long episodic stuff. They do it because they enjoy the feature film and what kind of story they can push in a certain lot of time. We're going to lose a lot of these like big names. It's going to change everything, and I think that's just going to ruin like viewing experience in general if they do that.
Jeff, you make a great point, but these guys are just storytellers and they want to tell their stories. If the feature film didn't exist, if TV didn't exist, if we just had books, they would be authors. You like the drive in an artist isn't necessarily dictated by the format.
It's definitely
more about just telling their story.
For sure, but like listening to some of them talk in their interviews and stuff like that, they're driven by like the material they produce in like feature length films and stuff like that. So I personally believe that it's going to ruin at least some of the industry. Not granted, not all of it, but we will see some big names walk away from the whole thing.
I could see Nolan walking away. I could see Nolan like saying, "No, that's not what I do."
I could see James Gunn walking away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Patty Jenkins would stay, and so forth. Others like her, and say, "Well, you know what? Let me give this a try." But like a Martin Scorsese, no, he's not. He'll fund his own film, but he will not do an episodic. It's something go to streaming. That is not his
definitely
thing.
not.
Unless he has a major mega deal with a streaming service, like I think he did. Was it The Irishman? Was that his? The one?
Netflix. Yeah,
it was Netflix. So I know they had a big push, and he still said, "I want it released in theaters, though, even though it's going to be on the thing in your streaming service. I still want it in the theater." And they did put some of it in the theater. I remember that. But a Tarantino. Okay. I don't think Tarantino would do that at all.
Well, again, the unique thing about the film business is this, like actual film production or film distribution or whatever, they need a theater to show it, right? So if the theater businesses all fucking go belly up in this process, if that's actually the end game of this conversion to streaming content, then if the theater dies, the feature film is the collateral damage in that process. Because unless the feature film is going to go onto a streaming service, it won't be seen by anybody. Like if somebody holds out and is like, I'm only going to show it in theaters, the only place you'll be able to see it is in festivals.
But at that point, I think they will just they'll still create their feature length films, but release them on streaming services. I don't think they would go the way of episodic series and stuff like that.
Like I don't know. I think we're going to see a lot of people I don't think people would hold out in that way and be like, I'm never going to do a serialized story. I think that's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they'd never do it, but yeah. I don't think the feature-length film is going to die either way if theater goes.
I think that's semantics. I really do. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. You know, the VR companies need to get on this and figure out a way to kind of give you that theater experience at home.
Yeah.
They need to
make VR cheaper first.
Yeah.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
Well, that too. But again, VR is something that you buy once and you can, you know,
for sure,
update it as you go. So it's more of a software issue. So, you know, I want to close out here by just talking about, you know, we just discussed feature films, but I really think that this is going to be a dawning moment. I think that this is, you know, when I heard this announcement about Warner Media releasing all their feature titles onto HBO Max, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. Like, this was a paradigm shifting moment. This is one of those defining moments. It's an inflection point in history. And I really think we're going to see a lot of things kind of get shaken up by this. I don't think it's just going to affect theaters. I think it's going to affect the entire business of film production in general. I definitely see this rippling out and affecting all kinds of people and all kinds of businesses and all kinds of industries. And one of the things that I'm excited to see is to see long form storytelling, you know, these serialized TV on demand products become more prevalent. But not only become more prevalent, but to see studios take more of an investment in them. Because one of my biggest complaints with streaming is, you know, you'll be on Netflix or you be on Prime or whatever, and you find a series that sounds interesting. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to check this out. And, you know, you go to IMDb, it's, you know, first season's got a good rating. All right, cool, I'm in. Let's do this. But then you click on episodes and more, or you click on the season tab, and it shows you that the show only ran 2 or 3 seasons, or even just 1 season. It got canceled. So why the fuck would I watch it if I don't get to see the conclusion of the story? Like, why would I even stream it? Why would I even invest my time into something where it gets canceled? Because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Netflix is buying up series from other production companies and from other studios that were already canceled.
No, I hadn't noticed that.
Yeah, just so they can fill their content. Just so they can they can just put content into the system. They will buy something that was canceled and never finished.
But then there's enough following at that point, they consider continuing it too and adding, giving it a budget.
Maybe that's part of their strategy when they do that. Maybe they're like, hey, you know what? Here's 1 season of a show that never went anywhere. But maybe if we put it out now, we can create a cult following for it.
Well, Frank,
and we can turn it into something.
Think of Young Justice. Young Justice was canceled, and what helped bring it back? Netflix.
Same with Clone Wars, right?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Netflix is a way of bringing good things back that TV itself canceled.
Sure, but we're also talking about 2 series that went multiple seasons before getting canceled.
This is true.
Right? But there's a lot of shows out there that are like 1 season, 2 season that were canceled and will never get to finish, right? And not to mention that Netflix cancels a ton of their series. They're not shy about canceling something that is currently running.
It's true.
If it's not working for them, they'll cancel it. They don't care how big the fan base is. They don't give a shit. Look what they did to Sense8. Look what they did to Daredevil.
But like Sense8's budget was just like astronomical.
It was.
Like
it was a fantastic show.
Great show, but also they kind of rushed. I mean, they rushed it because they had to finish it. I see your point there though.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think this is a delicate balancing act moving forward. You know, I think that the studios are really going to have to take a hard look at how people are experiencing their content, how they want to experience content. Yeah, I don't know where this is headed. But I think that there's a lot of advantages to what's going to happen, and there's a lot of negatives to what's going to happen. And it's just going to shake out the way that it shakes out. You know, I'm concerned that, like, you know, we really haven't talked much about the way that the directors have reacted, or actors or people in the business have reacted because I feel like they have every right to feel the way that they do. You know, it's their livelihood. It's the way that they make money. You know, Hollywood is this system of hierarchy, you know, and, you know, what have you done for me lately? Like, if you're not somebody who has recently released something that has blown up at the box office, then you're probably not on the radar of somebody who can get you that next opportunity. They want to find the guy that's going to deliver them the next hit based on whatever he did previously. They use those as measures. So if the box office is going to be something that's not going to be a strong indicator of that anymore, then, you know, the whole industry shifts. Like, the ground is literally shifting on the entertainment industry right now. It's literally shifting. Like, this is not, you know, I see people just saying, you know, big deal. It is a big deal. It's a fucking huge deal. Like, this is a transformative moment in entertainment. This is a transformative moment in filmmaking and television making. This is people are going to remember this for a long time. And for HBO to be the one to do it, or for Warner Media to be the one to do it, and to take this huge gamble, it's crazy. It's insane. It's really, really ambitious. But if they fall flat on their face, fuck, man, that company is going into the toilet.
Yeah.
Like, the stock will plummet.
It's not just going to hurt film. That will have repercussions in comic books, since they do own DC. So, I mean, they already cut titles. They had already cut titles. I want to tell you, like, around at the beginning of fall, that they were just like, and like authors and writers and artists were just told, like, yeah, we're not continuing your story. Sorry, you're like on issue number 13. They had some changing of the guard, you know, like even Jim Lee, who we all know as a guy who rebooted the X-Men in the early 90s. He was taken off a certain position, and I think I can't remember what it is, but one of the big guys, and even Dan DiDio, who had like that joint. Oh, it was the editor in chief. He's been removed to do. Dan left the company, and then Jim stayed as the editor, the sole editor in chief, and then they removed him from that position. They gave it to somebody else who is not a comic book person. So that person can look at it in the glass of saying, well, I'm looking at it with the lens of, let's say, the movie industry. This doesn't fit, and I can cut more. And, you know, there's a lot of artists that could be affected, and not just artists, but the way I see it, the majority of the films that we all enjoy for this decade that's closing out, or that has closed out already, were films that came from comic book based, you know, characters, you know?
Yep. No, you're right, man. And here's the other thing. Before this even happened, before this announcement even went out, Disney and Warner were in a cold war already.
Yeah.
They were trying to destroy each other by, you know, dropping information about the movies that are coming out, right? Like, you know, DC was like, we're doing multiverse. Marvel's like, we're doing multiverse too. Yep. You know, like, you know, they're going to do this Spideyverse film. Apparently, the Spider-Man 3, it looks like, is going to be this Spideyverse film.
Yep.
And they're just constantly trying to outdo each other in the press. Like, their PR is just it's like a public relations Cold War. They are going toe to toe. And not only is the battle going to be fought on the internet with the fans and with the critics, but the battle is also going to be fought on these platforms too.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to need to match up with each other across the line and figure out, somebody's going to have to blink first.
Well,
it's going to be an all-out fucking bloodbath.
That's the thing. Like, they're comparing them in the stock market. When you hear them talk about Disney numbers versus AT&T numbers, they talk about how many people are subscribed. They're talking about subscriber numbers. Even Disney, who has theme parks, who has cruise lines, they're not talking about that because they're all closed. So the only thing they're talking about is, what are their subscription numbers, and how does HBO Max compare to the subscription numbers that Disney set out first? You know, how were their numbers? Because Netflix is a different monster altogether, but they're comparing them. And I know they want to go at each other, to the point that from what I heard, the rehashing of James Gunn's tweets were done by the people at Warner Brothers so they can cut James Gunn so they can pick him up for Suicide Squad. And then, then finally somebody's like, yeah, I think we just lost a Titan on our side and we're going to have to get him back. But we kind of burned a bridge and he doesn't want to let go of his baby. So he's going to come back. But I know he was pissed.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that about. Was that is that confirmed or is that a rumor, Ralph?
I think that was a rumor that it was because the person that was apparently pushing it, who was retweeting like, hey, did you guys see all these tweets that James Gunn had done? James Gunn had already addressed those tweets. From what I know, he had already addressed those tweets with Disney executives. He had already apologized for those tweets. Now, Guardians 1, Guardians 2 is a success. And then this person who apparently has some type of connection to Warner Brothers starts bringing this up in the sight of others, and they didn't know it. And these are people who have weight behind them in the industry. And then they started like, hey, what about these tweets? And he's like, I've already apologized. I already talked to my superiors about this. We're okay with it. And they're like, well, wait a second. Now it's getting a lot of light. It's in the news a lot. It's on CNBC. They're talking about your tweets, James, and we're going to have to make a decision. Yeah. And then they made a decision. And then where did he go? He went to go film Suicide Squad, and you're like, how the heck did that happen? Especially when you tie it back to the person who started the fire, had some type of connection to Warner Brothers. It's like, that's weird.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, before we go, I want to talk about this Spider-Man 3 thing. There's been so much information dropped in the last 48 hours.
Unbelievable.
Alfred Molina is coming back as Dr. Octopus. Charlie Cox is apparently going to be in the movie as Daredevil, as Matt Murdock. Rumored is that the Sinister Six is going to be the big bad. That Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are going to be in it. Doctor Strange is already in it.
I heard Garfield confirmed already. Like,
did he really?
He himself said it.
Wow. Okay.
That's crazy.
What the fuck? Okay. See, again, like they're fighting a war of attrition. They're just trying to kill each other. That's basically what's happening. We've been hearing, Flash said it first. The Flash movie guys said it first. We're bringing in 2 Batmans, right? Yep. Michael Keaton Batman and Ben Affleck Batman. And Marvel just basically was like, okay, well, we're going to do this thing with Spider-Man then, right? Mm-hmm. It was almost like they're going tit for tat. They're answering, one throws a left, the other counters. One throws a right, the other counters. It's just a constant back and forth. And honestly, I'm getting a little fucking bored of it. And I'm getting a little concerned that this has become more of a dick measuring contest and more about driving stock price than actually entertaining the fans.
I mean, if the content is good, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, but how good can it be when you're introducing these incredible characters into a feature-length film and you're not even going to have time to fully explore them?
It's only 2.5 hours max. So in reality, you're not going to have enough time for that. Unless they say Flashpoint is going to be 3 films long, or Spideyverse is going to be Spideyverse A, B, or part 1, part 2.
I feel like these guys are I think they're gonna be like trilogies or like full on like movie series. There's no way they're gonna do this in one film. It would just be doing a disservice to themselves, to the fans, and everybody. They need to have like multiple films to really explore what they're saying what they're produced to us.
But see, I said the same thing. Sorry, I said the same thing when they announced Civil War. I'm like, how can you do a Civil War movie? You had over 100 issues of comic book lore that can feed into Civil War. How is it that you're going to do that in 2 hours plus?
By changing the entire concept.
Changing the entire concept and totally rearranging characters and even the storyline and so forth. So to me, it was crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so I'll admit right now, I didn't read Civil War until after I saw the film. And I'm kind of sad that I didn't read it beforehand.
I'm sad for you too.
It's a very rich experience. Not only do you get to see the characters that were out in front for the movie, but you get to see behind the scenes too. There are reporters, there are political people, there are like literally you get taken into the psyche of all these different people and what they're going through. And the Peter Parker part of Civil War in the comic book is much better than what we got in the movie. 100%. I can say that.
Everything in the comic was better than what we got in the movie. Now, that's not saying I didn't enjoy the movie for what it was, but that was not Civil War.
Yeah. Right. I mean, you even list, not just because we didn't have the FF in it, the Fantastic Four in it, just the dilemma of an entire house divided between husband and wife because Reed Richards was for it and Sue Richards was not for the Registration Act, that it broke the Fantastic Four. And you know the history of those characters, how hard that would have been, but that's not featured in the film. The only thing that we got was the relationship between Steve and Tony. And they had to do that for a 2-hour film and then inject, the other characters to make it bigger so that way it fit into the Infinity War and Endgame, where we can tie everybody together. But I think Spider-Man 3 will be a fun film. It will be a popcorn film. But I think there's going to be a lot of gaps if they're not careful, because the studio will cut. Like, how many? I mean, we're getting a Snyder cut. Even the director's cut that we got for Batman v Superman was better than what we got in the theatrical release.
Oh yeah, it made shit more clear. Like,
I mean,
the theatrical release of that was weird. It made no sense.
The simple, why didn't he see the bomb? Well, you see it in the other one. It was lead coated. Okay, well that's all you had to do. Why'd you cut that from the film? That's literally 2 seconds.
And I feel like it was a very important thing. Like,
it was one of
the
most
continuity
important parts of exposition. It was one of the most important parts of exposition. Listen, man, I've gone on record many fucking times, and I say one of Warner's greatest crimes was editing down that film.
Yeah.
Like, you sent us into the theater knowing we basically were not going to understand anything fucking going on.
Yeah.
And I hate Warner Media for that. Like, I can't tell you how angry I am about that. But let's get back to this Spider-Man 3 thing. So I think if they're just doing this to tell the fans that Charlie Cox is going to be part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Daredevil, that's cool. I can dig that. But if this is some multiverse bullshit where the Daredevil of the TV property is in a different universe than Tom Holland's Spider-Man, that's ridiculous. I don't want to see that shit. That's fucking stupid.
I think comicbook.com had said, well, if you're going to bring back Charlie, why don't you bring back Ben Affleck? Daredevil.
No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm okay with that. I am perfectly fine with okay, comicbook.com. Hold on a second. I just got a tweet from comicbook.com. Tobey Maguire was spotted arriving for a costume fitting amid Spider-Man 3 casting rumors.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. So, all right. Dude, I don't know. Okay, like, this story is going to be very tricky. I have a lot of faith in Sam Raimi. I think Sam Raimi's an excellent director. He's an accomplished director. And I think that it can be done. But with all these fucking characters, it's going to be tough. And I'm definitely concerned. But if it's like this little kind of, this tease of what's to come in the Spider-Man franchise or what's to come farther on down the road in other MCU movies, like it's always been, like, if it's leading up to something bigger, then that's cool.
Yeah.
I think, Jeff, were you on the episode when we were talking about what could potentially happen in the story? And we came up with the idea of, would the real Peter Parker please stand up? Like, it's going to be like the shell game, like this kind of, all three of them. Okay. So I came up with this theory. It should be like all three Spider-Man running around the city because Peter's identity has been revealed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Doctor Strange opens up all these portals, goes in, gets Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, goes and gets Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and says, this Spider-Man needs your help because his villains in this world know who he is, and we need your help to defeat them. And I think that could be the story. If Charlie Cox is in this story and he's playing Daredevil, he's definitely going to be the legal help to Peter Parker.
Correct.
That has to be.
You don't think he's going to suit up?
No, I think he'll suit up.
I agree.
But I don't think that Peter is going to know that Matt Murdock and Daredevil are one and the same.
I agree with you, and I read somewhere that there was discussions of bringing in She-Hulk, Jennifer, as his attorney, so they could start tying the show. But it kind of made sense because of his relationship that he has with Daredevil in the comics to use Daredevil. But then I hope you're right that it's not an alternate universe. Matt Murdock, he resides in a different universe, because that's gonna be crap.
Yeah, no, I hope that's not the case, because that's just fan service, and I'm not interested in fan service. So speaking of fan service, I want to talk about fan service a bit. And the reason I want to talk about it is because of The Mandalorian and the last couple of episodes. Okay. And we can talk about fan service in the context of Spider-Man 3, because that's what we're talking about. But I really feel like the production teams, the creative teams of these shows, of these movies, are giving way too much weight to what the fans want and what the fans are talking about. I really feel it starting to almost overshadow the quality of the storytelling, the quality of the character development, the quality of the actual end product. Would you guys agree with that at this point?
Go ahead.
I guess in a way it does, because you're focused too much on delivering what like the fans want, and it's kind of just, it's very in your face for sure.
I personally think it is. Season 2 has become fan service, and I know he kind of said that in like the director's video, where he's like, I want to put in the connections, and I want to put in characters, but it's almost like it's no longer the story of the Mandalorian. Now you got, the other Mandalorians group, the Night Owls, and you have the Darksaber story in there, and then now you got Boba, and you got all these other characters, and you're like, well, is it the Mandalorian show or is it the other guy's show?
Yeah,
I really feel like the Mandalorian has become like a test market for spinoffs. Like it's just this like testing grounds for spinoffs. Like, let's introduce a character, let's see how the internet reacts to her, because we know exactly how these things play out. Fans have gotten to the point of insanity where they don't even think about what quality is anymore. Like obviously I'm not speaking about all fans. I'm not trying to lump you all together, but I see a lot of fans on Twitter that are just willing to give up good story, good character development, just so they can have a brief moment with, something from their fucking childhood or something that's nostalgic to them, and I think that is ultimately going to kill everything that we love. Because if you can't attach a decent story and you can't develop a well fleshed out character, what's the point? Like, what's the point? Like it's basically turning into fucking porn. Porn doesn't have a story.
I don't know. I've seen some pretty interesting stories in porn.
But at the end of the day, it becomes more about utility. It doesn't really become more about experience, and I want experience back in my content. Like I want to cheer on characters. I want to hate characters. I want to be emotionally invested in what I'm getting. Right. And there's nothing really to sink my teeth in as far as The Mandalorian goes so far this season. I was disappointed with the Ahsoka Tano debut. Yep. And I did a whole episode about it. Jeff, did you see the poll I put up for the episode?
Yes.
You get the poll results?
Yeah, 7. Okay, so I got 7 that loved it and 3 that clicked the poo symbol. So we're good. Seven hearts, three poos. 7 hearts, 3 poos.
My reaction has been that, yeah, you remember when we saw The Last Dragon, the actual Bruce Lee movie from the 90s or something like that, or
you mean the dragon?
And,
you mean the dragon?
And there you go, Enter the Dragon. He was walking through Hollywood with the director or the person that was trying to get him a show, and he's like, "Look, what we do is we go around every week and we solve a problem, but we do it with kung fu." And they're like, "Yes, kung fu," and that was the entire show that he was pitching. That's literally what I feel that Mandalorian is. Every week we solve one problem for a city or a little planet or podunk location. They got a dragon. He got to go kill this, and then they'll give him the information. You got to send this woman over to meet her husband in another location, and we'll do it with a baby Yoda. Yes, that's exactly what the show has become. And I think he could have dropped hints like even the end of episode 1 with just Boba Fett, just the actor. We all know him, and we would have seen him, and we would have been like, "That's it." And that guy doesn't need to come back until season 5, But you literally brought him back like not even 3 episodes later, and he's like, "Give me what's mine." And now you're having him be more super duper than he's ever has been featured in a film or in a TV series. And we're like, that's the Boba Fett we wanted to see in Return of the Jedi that we never got, and we got him episodically. And mind you, he's super old at this point, and he's not young, and he's got the beer belly. We all saw it when he got the profile and he had the suit of armor on and he had the black skirt. You could see the beer belly. I'm like, well, at least I know I can cosplay this here. But that being the case, I think every episode has been like, we'll solve a problem and we have a baby Yoda instead of like expanding it. And I agree with you on Ahsoka. I think we touched base about that. But that being the case, I do think Favreau and Filoni are using at least season 2, hopefully not 3, season 2 as, hey, let's get everybody who we want in this, because we don't know if we're going to get season 3 or 4 or 5, and they get all their toys at one time. But that,
I don't think it's noble as that, man. I think it's really just all about like, this is our testing ground to figure out what spin-offs are going to be popular and which ones aren't. They're definitely looking at the data and going, oh shit, okay, so Bo-Katan didn't get the best response, right? So they're probably going to pass on her. But Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka Tano got this huge bump, and everybody's excited about her, so she's probably going to get a spinoff at some point. But talking about Boba Fett for a second, so I was a little blown away by the brutality that he was using, because I think it's just comparing. Well, you really don't know a lot about the character, right? You really don't know really anything about him. But that dude went to fucking town on those cats. Like, that was some like serious brutalizing, That was some Game of Thrones shit. So I don't know whether that this is something that we should expect in future episodes of The Mandalorian where it's going to be this brutal, but it definitely changed the tone of Star Wars for me, a little bit for sure. I think that that's something that I don't know, man. It definitely kind of shifted the tone of the show a little bit for me.
I do think it was very Game of Thrones, where it just wasn't as, let's say, meat and cleaver, and we didn't see so much, but he was going to town, totally different than any other show we've ever seen.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And did you guys ever think about this too? I know you guys are both Clone Wars fans. And Ralph, actually, you just watched Clone Wars and Rebels, right?
Yep, sure did.
Like, how is it that the writing has been better in an animated series than it's been in The Mandalorian?
I you know what? My friend literally says that the Mandalorian, when he watches it seems like a kid in theater class wrote it, and I kind of understand why he feels that way. the Clone Wars animated series was, I think, a stroke of genius, and it was a masterpiece. But this has been kind of rough at certain points.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it feels like the Clone Wars was well thought out, and the Mandalorian was like, what can we do to bring as many fanboys or new people to watch this?
Yeah, you probably make a good point. I think that was probably a lot of the motivation behind it. You know, when we got the trailer, I really thought that they were giving us something with that ice planet. You know, when you see Mando with Grogu in his arms, he's walking past that ice shelf, and you're like, okay, that's an ice planet. It's probably not Hoth, but what if it's Ilum? That's what I said to myself. And the story I had in my mind was like this, because there was already rumors about Ahsoka. There was already rumors about all these people coming in to play different parts. And the Mandalorian I wanted to see was Mando searching the galaxy, looking at old Jedi sites, trying to figure out something that would connect to Baby Yoda, something that would lead him somewhere, lead him to a Jedi, lead him to somebody that can help him on his journey, right? And what I envisioned was Mando would cross paths with Ahsoka and Sabine while they were looking for Ezra, because they would be going to Jedi sites to try and find some sort of ancient knowledge to understand, where the Purrgil go, or how the Purrgil travel, or whatever, right? But now all we're getting is here's Ahsoka. She's a Jedi again. Like, don't even worry about what happened in the Clone Wars. Like, you see no psychological disconnect at all.
No.
You don't see anything disconnecting her from her identity as a Jedi. And she was totally disenfranchised with the Jedi. And that's not even a through line that's carried into this particular story, right? And then the other thing is you hear Thrawn's name get dropped, but if you watch Rebels, spoiler, you know that he got trapped with the Purrgil that jumped into hyperspace. And are we supposed to believe that the magistrate speaks Purrgil or can track Purrgil? Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense. And then I think Filoni covers his tracks the next morning and goes, "Oh, you know what? We're not sure when the epilogue for Rebels happened. We're not sure whether that happened after the Mandalorian or before the Mandalorian."
Yeah, I heard that, and I was like, no, you do know, but you may have caught yourself in a jam, and you're figuring, this is the only way out.
Yeah. No, I think that's ultimately the case, dude. I really do. But yeah, listen, this has been a great conversation. We covered a lot. I'm gonna have to put a lot of hyphens in this episode title. It's gonna be the movie industry and Spider-Man 3 and Mandalorian and fan service and all kinds of shit. So, Ralph, again, thanks so much for joining us, dude. Really, really appreciate it. It was great having you on with us. And, we've got some big things in the works, me and you, and I'm very excited to reveal those things as we move forward and kind of put things into place. I'm excited to work with you on these things. I think everybody's going to be stoked about what we got planned. And man, thanks again for joining us. Jeff, always a pleasure having you with me too, pal. And so I think we're going to sign off here. I'm Frank McGuire.
I'm Jeff Mack.
And I'm Ralph Orona.
Peace.
Peace out, guys.